Yes, there really is so much going on here on Optus World, but a very special guest to Jamal Elsheikh. Thank you for joining us. You have an amazing story personally, but now you're an amazing advocate for not only football, but sport. Tell us about what you are doing.
Right, thanks for having me here, everyone. My name is Jamal Elsheikh. I'm a founder of an organization called Reflect Forward. Reflect Forward is a joint movement between athletes and schools. And really, it's about leveraging the power of sports to drive change when it comes to racism. We all know in Australia how much racism affects people, whether in sports, 1 in 5 people are affected, or whether in schools, 1 in 3 people. So the example we've taken here at Reflect Forward is the anti-racism movement and how the power of athletes, them using their voices, their platforms, to really drive change and bring forward this conversation. We do take an all sports approach, so it's not one particular sport. Obviously, right now it's the football, it's the FIFA Women's World Cup, and we'll talk about that later. Kaya Simon and some of the other ambassadors that we've got. But we take an all sports approach, so whether it's cricket, whether it's football, or whether it's other sports. So that's a bit of the work and the work that we do and the movement that we've started 4 or 5 years ago.
We've just seen some of these stars here. Kaya Simon, Andrew Redmayne, who of course was the hero for the men's team last year to get us to the World Cup. Nikolai Topor-Stanley, one of the most appearances in the A-League's men. What do these athletes do for the organisation? How do they get involved?
Great. So right after, maybe September last year, in the lead up to the Qatar World Cup, we had a partnership with the PFA, the Professional Footballers Australia. And part of that was how can really the footballers in Australia leverage their voices, their platforms to really advance the conversation. Out of all, we picked, Socceroos legend, Andrew Redmayne, picked Matilda's legend, Kaya Simon and Nikolai Topor-Stanley. What they've done really is sat with us, they filmed educational content for schools. We turned that into lesson plans, into programs and courses. And we've done that, we launched it at the Qatar World Cup in November. 6 months into this, so May, we just got the report of 6 months, how did that perform, educational content. You look at it, it goes to 80 schools, 18,000 students, and that's really the power of athletes. So to answer your question, it was really Nikolai Topor-Stanley, Andrew Redmayne, and Kaya Simon really putting their voices, their stories out there to say this is not on, there's no space for racism in sports, how can we really start our bits? So that was really the start of it.
Yeah, it's amazing. Athletes have so much power, and I think now in the past few years we've been able to use it in a really positive way, which is really inspiring. We also saw the taking a knee stance, which was massive. We've seen England and Colombia.
Activism, right? The knee is a symbol for, I guess, demonstrating against the racial injustice in all over the world. It started in 2016, as you might all know, Colin Kaepernick taking the knee. But if you think about it, if we take a step back here, athletes do take different forms to express their opinion. At the end of the day, they're part of the society. Things that affect the society affects them, and they have a role model responsibility to kind of communicate that. The question here is about how can we really, I guess, drive change when it comes to all of this and taking the knee. Some players, when the national anthem is played, they don't sing, and that's part of us taking a stand. So the knee is another form of gesture. What I know from working with some of the athletes firsthand, before they take the knee, we have conversation about what does it mean. Is the knee the right one? Or is it the Black Power salute, the Tommy Smith one? Or is it the barefoot circles? So they do a lot of work before they take a stand, but once they do, that's the way of activating it, bringing awareness and get people on board with the conversation.
Incredible. A World Cup feels like a great moment to do that because you're showcased to the entire world, not just the whole nation. We could talk for ages here on here about your story as well. I think everyone that's watching from home should look you up and hear about your story and why you started this because it's incredible. But I want to just send a message to everyone watching back home, all the fans. We've seen thousands turn up to this Women's World Cup. It's like nothing we've seen before. How can an average sports fan that's gotten involved in this World Cup, how can they help contribute to this change?
Oh, great question. One of the big things we talk about is the power of advocates and allies. And those are essentially people who don't really, maybe they've never experienced racism, but they are the bystanders who can really say something, who can report it, who can challenge it, who can take a stand. Because, I mean, let's talk about athletes for a second here. Whether they take their actions and inactions when it comes to social change, people talk about it. But if you take that back to people, everyday people, it's the same thing. Like, these are things affecting people's life and livelihood, right? Where do you stand in it? And the simple thing you can do, that's not on. I don't welcome this. But sometimes, or it could be someone saying a joke. It's not a funny joke if it's at the expense of someone else. These are small little things people can do, but also, as you said, there's a lot, I guess, out there people can check out in terms of how they can take steps to be better allies and advocates.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to ask you, what is your goal from this in the short-term future? I'm sure you have a long-term goal as well, but what do you want to achieve? You've already achieved so much. But
you.
I'm sure you're not going to stop anytime soon,
Nah.
which I think is so inspiring. So what's your short-term, long-term goal for this?
Great question. A couple of things we're working on. So one of the challenges right now, if you look at the space of anti-racism, one of the biggest challenges is not even reported. Like I heard a stat about 1 incident a month is being reported in sports.
Right.
And we know it affects 1 in 5 in sports. So the numbers are not really adding up. One of the projects that we're working on is what we call an anti-racism reporting line. We want to give people the options and pathways to really report incidents of racism through mobile application.
Right.
So then really people have it portable and able to do that, but that's really a way for people to get support. Because if you want people to report it, they got to feel supported.
Safe as well.
Safe,
Yeah,
To do that.
Absolutely,
And that's
yeah.
the thing, because we really create a lot of safe spaces. So
Yeah.
for us, really, the natural segue is how can we get people maybe to report more so we have data to really back why this is a priority and why it should be across the nation.
Yeah.
I can say. So that's a bit of the short-term project. So a bit longer term, and looking at the examples of the UK and what they've done in No Room for Racism, or Show Racism the Red Card, they started actually a fund.
Yeah.
And the way it works out is, let's say a player, 2 players, someone said something racist on another one. There's usually a fine. That fine goes into a fund, so then the player can have a say whether they want to invest in education in programs in schools, sports, or whether they want to put it to do a public activation stand in the sports arena.
Absolutely.
I've got to jump in with a super quick one. Social media.
Yes.
Like, has that been a good or a bad? Because I feel like in some ways that helps spread awareness, but in some ways it's just a tool for people to like hide behind a mask and say some pretty terrible things, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And players had some of it. One of the big questions we get is, should players really, or athletes, should they be talking about this or should they play in the game? That's the most common thing that maybe comes up in our socials.
Yeah.
That's part of the conversation we're trying to have.
Yeah.
As I said, athletes are role models, they're part of the community, and they have
Yeah.
a responsibility to talk about certain things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It is a conversation, and I'm glad we're on the couch starting the conversation. There's so much more, and there's so much more here on Optus Sport after the break.